Hi, I'm Zach. Welcome to Juicebox. In this video, I want to take you through the basic functionality and capabilities in our platform to get you started on being able to build your own Juicebox applications and change the way that you share and communicate with data. If you signed up for a Juicebox Workspace, you would come into our Hello Juicebox application seen here. And what we ask you to do is to create a bar chart just to get started. I'll show you how that looks. You would select Add a Chart, choose a bar chart, make a choice as to what you want to show in that bar chart, the metric and dimension you want to use. And when you save that, that's going to put a chart on the screen, just like this. So it's as easy as that. What I want to do to get started is just give you a little orientation on what you're seeing here. On the right-hand side of your screen is the application that you're building. So this is where the content of the text, images, visualizations that you want to use in order to present your data are shown. On the left-hand side is the editing panel. So if you're an editor of an application, you have the ability to control what you're putting on the screen. There's an area for overall settings and themes for your application, a place to load data. The designer tab is where you put the text and visualizations and reorder the content and really construct the application that you're building. And then ultimately you can publish and share this application with the people on your team. So from there, I want to take you to the Workspace homepage, and this is where you can get a broader view of the functionality of Juicebox. This is your home base for Juicebox. This is the place where you'll find all the applications that you have either created yourself or someone on your team has shared with you. Each of these applications will have a indicator if you have editing rights. So if I select this edit button, it will open up the application in editing mode. There's also an indicator on the apps as to whether the application has been published yet or not. So the other thing you can access while on this homepage is the People tab. The People tab is going to show you all the people who have access to the workspace and what access or rights they have, what role they play. So I can open up one of these people in here and make a choice about what role I want Susan to have. I can choose, if we just want her to be a viewer, which applications she has access to. So in that way, you're really in complete control as to who is seeing which applications and what rights they have to change those applications. One other thing I want to highlight on this view is the Help button down here in the lower right. If I open that up, you'll see that this is a place where you can access our complete documentation for Juicebox. You can search our Help Center, where we have dozens of helpful articles to show you how to get things done in Juicebox. And if you want to reach out to our customer success team, you really should feel comfortable sending them a message. They're super friendly and happy to hear from you. So that's the Help area. Next up, I want to show you how simple and easy it is to create a brand new Juicebox application. All right, let's create a new application in Juicebox. The way you do that is simply go to this button in the upper right where you select Add New App. And that's going to take you through a short process where you make a few quick decisions about your application. Starting with a title, I have some data that I want to use here that's about UFO sightings. So I'm going to give that title to my application. Optionally, you can also enter a description. In this case, exploration of 80,000 counters with our friendly sky neighbors. And then there are a couple theming choices just to determine how you want the application to look. So we have some preset colors, but there's an opportunity in here to enter any hexadecimal code for a color. So I had picked one out. And your last choice is around fonts. So we have a few choices in here as well. I'm going to make this application bold. So with that, I've made the choices and I've created my application, and you'll see in a moment that it shows up on our home page. This is the new application, and I can go right into it and start editing that application. Now, as I go in here, I'll highlight a couple of things. The application lives at a unique URL that you'll see in your browser. We're actually in the draft mode because we haven't published this application yet. On the left is your editing panel with all those settings that you chose in the creation process. And you'll notice that we've stubbed out a few elements for your application, but once we get in here, we're going to start changing what we put on the screen. Next up, I want to show you how to load data into your application so we can get started building it. Once you've created an application in Juicebox, the next step is often to load up some data that you're going to use in building that application itself. So on this left side where we have our editor panel, you'll see that there are 4 tabs. There's the settings that you just set when you created the application. There's a data tab. There's the section where you actually decide on the content, the visualizations, the text that you want to put on the screen. We'll get to that shortly. And finally, there's an area where you can publish and decide who you want to share the application with. So let's go back to the data. This is where you can load up one or multiple data tables that you're going to use in order to build visualizations in your application. And I have a data set that I want to use here. I'm going to show it to you in Google Spreadsheets. This is a amazing data set that's about UFO encounters going back many, many years. It shows the date of the encounter, the location, what people perceived as the shape of the UFO, how long the encounter took place, a really interesting set of descriptions of what they actually said about it. And I added in here a country, latitude, longitude, so we can actually do some mapping with this data as well. So that's the data table, and I'll show you what it looks like in order to load that up into Juicebox. When we load data, we're going to be loading it as a CSV file, and I had downloaded that spreadsheet already as a CSV file, and here it is. And when I open that up, what we're going to do is load that file into Juicebox. We're going to turn it into a database table. And we're going to look at that database, those database fields, and identify which things are measures and dimensions, and kind of preview the data so that as you start to work with it, you know you have the right information for your application. So that's done loading up, and you're going to see a preview of the data. We show the first 100 rows. We give you a chance to rename it. And you can see here, these are the same fields that we have that I showed you in the Google spreadsheet. So we have the date, we've indicated which things are strings, which things are numbers. So this data looks right, looks like it loaded well. And all I do is hit the Add Automatically button. Is generally going to select all or most of the data fields. And we're going to add those now, turning them into what we call data ingredients. So we have a few measures, dimensions, a couple time ingredients. And ingredients are a description of those data fields that we can now change or manage in here in preparation for visualizing the data. So for example, I can open up any of these, and if I want to change the labels, I can do that. If I want to shorten the labels, in this case, I can change also how I want to aggregate the data. So if I don't want to add it up, but I want to use averages, I can choose the format. So when we show it in our visualizations, we're managing that as well. So any of these can be refined so that it's going to show the way you want it to show on the screen. We also have a capability in here called advanced ingredients. I'm not going to get into that right now, but if you duplicate this as an advanced ingredient, you'll have a lot of control as to how the information is calculated or bucketed. There's a lot of advanced capabilities built in there. So that's now we have our data prepped, and we're going to move on next to starting to build out the application itself. All right, let's get started building an application in Juicebox. We've loaded our data. Now we want to go to the Designer tab. And this is where the action is for building out the application. There's a couple of concepts in here that you'll want to understand. One of them is something that we call sections. So here we have 3 sections that come automatically when you build an application. You can change the name of those sections. You can collapse them. You can even move them around if you want to reorder them. Think of those as the paragraphs of your structure. Within those paragraphs, we have the items that we call slices. And slices are really the fundamental building block of your applications. This slice at the top has a title and the description that we started with. And you can also, on any slice, add a visualization. So you'll get a list of visualizations if you want to add one there. Within any of these slices, you'll see these plus buttons. That's all it takes to add another slice in here. So if I add under this first one another slice, you'll see that there's another text area and an opportunity to add a visualization. So these are the components that you want to be stacking up to walk someone through the data in your application. So let's get started in showing you how it looks to be able to build your application and add some content into these slices. I'm going to create a data card, which is a way of showing a set of measures or dimensions. So if you have a bunch of key metrics in your data, you could show those here. We have in our data, there was the count of encounters and the length of those encounters. If I add that data card and save it, it's going to show up here with those numbers from my data. And I might want to change the title here, summary measures. We use Markdown as a mechanism for being able to format the size of your text. So I made that a second level title for summary measures. So we got those measures. The next thing we might want to do is show a breakout of all these encounters by one of the dimensions that's in our data. So one of the interesting things I saw in the data was a breakout by UFO shapes. So I'm going to put a title on my slice and choose a bar chart as a way to break out those values. And I can choose the bars are going to be UFO shapes. So that's a data ingredient I have in here. And then one of the really useful things in Juicebox is I can reference a different slice so that I can dynamically show what's on the screen. So if I reference this previous slice as the value for my bar width and save that, you'll see that now we're showing a breakout by UFO shapes, but that's actually driven by what gets selected above here. So if I have a set of key metrics and I want to have a breakout of that connected to this, I can simply set it up in my configuration to refer to the selected metric above there. One other thing I want to add in here is a trend chart. We had the dates of when these encounters with UFOs took place. So we have a trend chart that we'll add in here. When did the encounters occur? We want to save that, and we're going to add in the time period is the dates, and the y-axis we're going to say is going to be the count. So we add that in there, and there's your trend chart. And these are things that we can actually move around on the screen and reorder. I'm going to go in a little more depth in a moment to show you what else you can do in order to add a map to this application. There's one more thing I want to add to this application. We've got a set of metrics and a trend and be able to break out those values by UFO shapes, but it'd be really cool to show where these UFO encounters are taking place by country, geographically on a map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this last section we have in here, and we're going to call it map. And instead of being a conclusion, we're going to add, we're going to say, where did those encounters occur? So this is a slice in here, and we're going to add a map. But actually, before we do that, we're going to need to create what is called a place ingredient. So a place ingredient is a ingredient where we have associated a certain dimension with a latitude and longitude value, so we know where to put them on the map. And the way you do that is we're going to go back to our data source, and I'm going to actually go to the ingredient where I want to use to put on the map, which is country in this case, and I'm going to create a place ingredient, and we're going to call this country location. Country location, so it needs a name, and then you want to associate. In my data, I already had a country latitude and a country longitude for that. And we're going to save that as a new ingredient. That's a place ingredient. It's going to show up over here. There's my country location. And now if I go back to the design tab, I can actually add that map that I want. So we're going to add a chart of the map type. We're going to choose that country location. I'm going to size those bubbles by the count of encounters in that country. We can color them by the length of encounter, and we have a bunch of different styles for those maps. I'm going to give it the night style because that's when those encounters most often occur. And what you'll see once that shows up on the screen is we have a map now showing where all those encounters occurred. And if I roll over any of these points, a huge number of these occur in the United States, but also all over the world. And when we roll over them, we get the details of the count and the average length of the encounter for those. And there's my map. Real quick, I want to add one other thing because I think it's important for this data story. I'm going to add a table that's going to show the descriptions. So if you remember in the data, there's a description, and maybe we'll put the countries, and we'll put the dates. And that's going to give us all that qualitative data that's in the data table. So these are all the descriptions. And what's nice again about Juicebox is that if you select something at any tier of your story, it's going to flow down the page. So if I want to select just people who saw Fireball, that's going to show just the people who saw Fireball. That's going to update the data on my map. And then if I wanted to select the 7 examples of that in Mexico, that's going to filter down the page to the table down below here, and we can see those descriptions. So now we have a little data story here, and the thing I want to do next is show you a little bit about how we can format and style this to make this data story look even better. So we've created a nice little application with our UFO sightings data that shows some overall key measures, how those encounters trended over time, a breakout by UFO shapes. And you could drill into this data to get down to even finding where in the world these encounters were identified. So that's a pretty good looking application, but I think there's a bunch of things that I want to show you that are ways that we can dress up this application, make it look even better. So one of the first things I'd like to add in here is an image in the introduction. So the way we do that, one of the places I like to find images, this is on this site called Unsplash. I can take one of these images, copy the image address. I can add that right into one of these slices. Again, this uses a syntax called Markdown. And I can just paste that image address in here. That's going to put that image on the screen. Now, of course, we want to source that as well. So source Unsplash. And we want to put the information about the actual creator of that image as well in those details. In these sections, I can actually make choices about how I want the slices to lay out. So I chose in this top section to lay things out left to right, side by side. So we have a title and then the image next to it. So that saves a little space there. We also can work with colors and backgrounds as we're styling our application. The site that I love to use around colors is something called Coolers. And I'd use this color as our kind of base color. So I'm going to take another complementary color in here. And I'm going to take this map section, which is right at the bottom here, and add a different background color to that section. You can actually add colors by section or by individual slices. So now this whole section with the map itself and the title, as well as the table of details below that, is all uses this background color. One of the other features in here that you might want to think about is how you lay out individual slices. So by default, the title goes on top, and I'm looking at this trend chart here, and the visualization goes below, but you can actually choose where you want the title to be relative to the visualization. So if you want to save a little vertical space, you can lay things out left to right. So now we have the title on the left and the visualization on the right. So you're just moving things around a little bit there and changing the colors. A little bit earlier, I had actually added an icon that I associate with the data, the application itself. And you can also do things like, these are nice little touches in here, where if you want to change how an icon associated with one of your data ingredients. So if I said time, I might be able to put a time icon on that ingredient. So those are just nice little touches that allow you to make your application a little more attractive, use colors, add some images, and make the whole thing a little more user-friendly. You've created your application. It looks great. It's time to publish and share this application. That's the last tab in the editing panel. When we open it up and we haven't published it yet, there's just really one choice, is to go ahead and publish it. When you do publish it, there are a couple of options that you have. You can either publish it as a public application, which means that if someone has the link, they don't need to sign in order to access it. Or if you publish it as private, you're going to be able to control, people will need to sign in to access it. So I chose to make this one private, but you can actually toggle back and forth with your application whenever you want. So we've published it. It is in private mode. And there's a link here that I can use to share it with other people on my team. So if I send someone this link, they'll be able to see the application. If they already have a Juicebox account and have access to your workspace, they'll go straight into that application. If they need to sign in and create an account, they'll be prompted to do that. I could toggle over to public, and now I can copy that public link and I could look at it. I could just share this link with anyone and they would be able to see the data and be able to interact with and explore this application that I've created. I'm going to go back over here, make it private. And as you may remember, if I go back to my apps tab, I'll be able to manage the people who have access to that application and control who views what and who has what control to be able to create new applications. So now you've created the application, you've published it. And the last thing I want to share with you is a little bit about how to get more help within Juicebox. If you're in Juicebox and you need help, we've created a number of different resources that are designed to make sure you can get all the answers that you need. It all starts with this button in the lower right of your screen, where you will see an opportunity to search for articles in our Help Center, go to the documentation, or send a message directly to our customer success team. Let me show you a little bit what those help areas look like. The Help Center is probably the best place to start. We have articles that cover everything from tutorials to getting started to more advanced features, all the capabilities within Juicebox. We have help articles. And you just want to search on those things to find the articles that will be most useful to the question or problem you're encountering. Our documentation gets right into the details of all the features and functionalities of Juicebox, everything from loading data to topics such as advanced ingredients. So if you want to be able to do calculations, bucket your dimensions, there's a bunch of really advanced, important functionality that we built into Juicebox that you might want to dive deeper into the documentation or to find that kind of information. And lastly, I would encourage you to reach out and contact our success team. They are there for you. They're happy to answer. They're happy to look things up to get you what you need to be successful. I really hope you get into Juicebox, start building some applications. We feel like we've created a really powerful new way for people to be able to present and tell stories with data. And I hope you have a great experience with it.